So this is the first I'm hearing of these allegations. I wonder if it's the same for you. I mean, the last we heard about Dwayne Haskins was that he was impaired, that he had run out of gas. He was on 595, which, if you're not familiar with South Florida, basically stretches from the ocean to the Everglades. And he was hit by a car or by a truck as he went for gas. This is completely different and new.
It certainly is. And what's really eye-catching about this for someone like me with a legal background is that this allegation that he was drugged and robbed as part of some sort of criminal conspiracy isn't mentioned more than just once at sort of the end of the suit. I mean, one would think that a player or a person of Haskins' stature, anyone for that matter, being allowed at all of these establishments, especially that nightclub, to be so out of it that he's drugged with ketamine and then robbed of a watch and whatever other personal possessions he might have had taken off of his person. You would think that this would form the basis of the lawsuit, but even Haskins' attorneys are sort of just burying these allegations within dozens and dozens and dozens of pages. Otherwise, it seems like a pretty standard wrongful death lawsuit against the truck company, against the nightclub, against the hotel, against anyone who might have overserved him. I was actually shocked when I read those allegations.
And Dan, you would think also that that might make it into the criminal paperwork as well, that if there was some conspiracy like this, that a prosecutor would have noticed it and maybe been investigating that as well.
Well, the thing that should jump off the page is that he tested positive for ketamine and norketamine, something that isn't usually in the system of someone who's had too much to drink. But this is also someone who theoretically could have had those prescribed for him because of his career, which is pretty non-standard. Now, prosecutors and investigators in Florida have had this case for more than a year, and none, even though the watch was missing, even though there are drugs in the system, no one has even suggested that there was any sort of foul play other than the tragic accident here, that Haskins had too much to drink, that he got behind the wheel of a car, his car ran out of gas, and then unfortunately was trying to walk to a gas station when he was struck. Every indication up until this filing was that this was just a tragic accident, a tragic series of circumstances.
Well, and Dan, so how much is this about money? How much is it about just trying to make sure that we don't think of Dwayne Haskins the way we have since he passed away? It was a tragic way for him to go. It's not a great memory to have. How much of that is about reframing the legacy and saying this wasn't his fault?
What sort of struck me was the fact that these allegations were just sort of almost tacked on to the primary allegations of civil wrongdoing in this suit. And what that sort of suggested to me when I read them was that this was, in fact, the family saying, okay, maybe this wasn't all Dwayne's fault. Maybe the narrative of Dwayne Haskins as a player who never really lived up to his potential because of off-the-field issues, because of the perception he didn't work hard enough, that culminating in his death, that bad choices led to his death, wasn't the full story, that maybe this was an attempt to rehab his image posthumously.
And Dan, we will have to see where this civil suit leads as a result of that, and to see if that does indeed reframe the legacy. Thank you for joining us. Dan O'Donnell, host of The Dan O'Donnell Show.
Thank you for watching. Go to newsnationnow.com to find NewsNation on your television provider. And don't forget to click the red subscribe button below to get more of NewsNation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.